Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for 1 bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Kirk Your Enthusiasm. This is Kirk Henderson, editor-in-chief of MavsMoneyball.com. Today, I am joined by my friend Matt Moore, Action Network. Are you a senior writer? What's your title?
Senior writer.
Does that mean like you're a senior citizen, or you're just like in charge of the writing?
I always wanted that title since I started in the industry. It was like the one that you strive to get to, is senior NBA writer. You work so hard to get to it, and the way I got it was I got to Action. And I said, hey, what's my title? And they said, we don't care. What do you want it to be? And I said, can I be senior NBA writer? And they rolled their eyes and said, sure. And then that's how I earned it. It was a great moment for me.
Well, if you don't know Matt, you're probably not online, which maybe that might be a good thing for your mental health. But Mavs fans are well versed, and Matt's usually very well backed Mavs takes, because in this, you write for Action Network as a gambling website. A lot of what you do is kind of started in gambling because you are a lot about gambling. But you've been in the NBA analyst position for 10 years. You know a lot about basketball, and I think it's safe to say that over the last several years, the Dallas Mavericks have sort of thrown you for a loop as far as what you think they're capable of versus what your modeling is telling you, and that's both from an analyst point of view and from a gambling point of view. And just to kind of get this started, if last year, you kind of placed the Mavericks just outside the West at 9th, and that was the first element, which got you everybody yelling at you. And then as the season went along, you kind of pushed back on Luka being a all NBA guy just because he looked like crap for the first half of the year. Where are you with the Mavericks at this point in time, looking at where things are before the season starts?
So I think Luka's going to win MVP. He's the favorite. No, I'm serious. He's the favorite. I think the way he's going to win it is going to feel very good in the immediate to Mavs fans. And then later it's going to be like, oh, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. I think he's going to have the highest usage in NBA history. I think he's going to exceed Harden. I think he's going to exceed Russ. I think he's going to have one of those seasons that is exactly like those seasons in all aspects.
But more
drawing and the grifting and the step back threes. And, honestly, it fits his game because the efficiency doesn't have to be super high level, because it's on that level of volume, any decent efficiency is pretty good. And I think that fits him really well. I like the shooters that they put around him, right? Everyone kind of chuckled at the photo on media day of Tim Hardaway Jr. He's back, as everyone's like, who? But I think he's really important. I think he's really important. They have so many weapons next to him. I am probably, of everybody in the online NBA media space, I am probably the most optimistic about the Christian Wood pairing. I am like the only one that's like, no, I think this can work. I think this could be really good.
Huh.
It's going to take buy-in, but I think it can be really, really good because he's a lot of what I thought Luka needed. So I think Luka's got to put up insane numbers, and he's going to win MVP. I don't know if they're going to win 50 games again, but I don't think they're going to win 45 either.
Sure.
I don't think they're going down, and I don't think they're going up. I think the biggest thing is that I think the loss of Brunson is being way overstated in the market. That's my big takeaway.
I want to circle back to that because that's actually what prompted me to bother you today. The Luke MVP thing, I tie it specifically to the Mavericks win total because I think unless they finish in the top 4, I don't think he's MVP because we're already starting to see a lot of narrative pushback on Jokic's MVP win last year, despite being the 6th seed. Now, I think that's ridiculous because the win total, it's like there's a morass in the West where 5 games separate 6 teams. Like, what are we doing? That's like coin flip stuff. What's your response to that kind of line of thinking?
So I think it depends on how the landscape of the Western Conference shakes out. So 3 of the Pacific Division teams, the Clippers, the Suns, and the Warriors, all have win totals that are above 50. They're at 51, 52, and 53, respectively. 51 and a half, 52 and a half, and 53 and a half. Well, guess what? There's only been twice in the last 25 years that one division has produced 3 50-win teams. So, like, right off the bat, you can identify, like, the market is inaccurate here. Like, one of these teams, now you have to guess which one, but one of these teams is not going to be as good. So if you take out one of those teams, right, and let's say one of those teams overperforms, and let's say the Nuggets do really well. If the Nuggets do really well, it's unlikely that both the Nuggets and the Wolves win 52-plus games, right? One of them, it's likely, but probably not both of them. One of them probably tops out like 47, 48. That's fine. If the Mavericks win their division and get tiebreaker by virtue of winning the division, much as they did last year, they had that tiebreaker, and then they wind up tied at 47, 48, 49 wins, right? And that gets them to like a 3 seed. Even if they win fewer games, I don't think Luka's odds are going to be that low. The other thing is, there's this idea of like the pushback, right? The talking head shows can yell all they want, but if the voters are still like, yeah, but that was the best guy. And they're like, but last year, don't we care about what it? Okay, the voters are still like, yeah, but he's the best guy. Like, that was the thing with Jokic last year. The voters didn't want to vote for Jokic last year. Nobody wanted to vote for Jokic. No one wanted to vote for Jokic. They didn't want to vote for him 2 years ago. But they were just like, look, man, they won 48 games with like a dustpan and a bucket of Slim Jims. Like, what do you want me to do? He's insane. He's the best. He's the best guy. And so that's gonna be the thing with Luka. Is they'll be, even if they win fewer games and they don't win as many as the top seeds in the West, because like the Suns have shown they can't produce a valid candidate. Like,
right.
If Devin was gonna get it, it's gonna be last year, right? The Clippers might win 55 games and Kawhi will still only play like 55.
Right.
And so if it's like Luka played 78 games, he came into camp in shape. Like, I have a bet on Luka to lead the league in both points and assists simultaneously.
Has that ever been done?
It's never been done. So actually, Russ may have done it. Or he was close behind Harden. He was like percentage points behind Harden in 17. So either way, it's like, if I think that Luka's going to put up those kind of numbers, especially because I will say also, one of the problems, and like Jokic has benefited from this, is some of these teams, a guy looks so good, he makes the rest of his team look worse, which in turn makes the top guy look better because he's dragging these bums all the way up there. Like, Aaron Gordon's a good NBA player. Jeff Green's a perfectly serviceable NBA player. Monte Morris is going to start in Washington. All of these guys were on the Nuggets last year. But if you talk to anybody, it's like, oh man, Jokic's team last year sucked. Like it was nobody. And like that I feel bad for the Mavericks, but it'll be incredible content.
Okay, the second thing I needed to push you on a little bit more was walk me through your Christian Wood, the way that works out with what you think he and Luka are capable of. Because I got to be honest, I've been watching him, and I see the talent, but then I also see why he's been on 7 teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is okay. Like the preseason is hard for me to. The problem with it with that first preseason game is it's like confirmation bias, right? Like you're worried that Christian Wood's going to be a shitty defender that doesn't care, and then he shows up in preseason game where most guys don't care, and he doesn't care, and everyone's like, aha! And it's like, well, okay, yes, this is what he's shown before. And like, don't get me wrong, like I asked around and like various league people whenever if I bring up the Mavericks, that's what I've gotten is like, boy, I don't know if Christian Wood and Jason Kidd's gonna work. There's like a lot of that. My big thing is basically I think the way to get around it is does Luka like playing with him or not? Like that will be the deciding factor because
Sure.
I have a hard time believing that Luka is going to be like, why didn't you defend harder? That's not what he's going to do. He's going to be like, did you make the shot? Did you roll correctly? Were you in the position that you needed to be in? Did you get me my assist? Did we score? And like Christian Wood is an athletic at rim threat who can also space to 3. So it's like you get the at rim gravity with Dwight Powell. Now maybe not as efficient because Dwight's so freaking good at it, but you get the at rim gravity of Dwight Powell with the 3-point accuracy of Maxi Kleber. And like I did 2 weeks of Rockets tape. And after I got my eyes to stop bleeding, my conclusion really was that Christian Wood was like by far their best player. And Rockets fans hate that because they hate his attitude, because they saw him half-assing it, because they saw him playing selfish. That's the thing. He's still more talented than everybody else on that roster last year because of a bunch of young kids. Mm-hmm. And so if Wood buys in, if he does buy in, which is a big if, but if he buys in, I think he can be the best weapon and the weapon that Luka's needed in terms of a consistent 2-man game his entire career.
Offensively, I see it because even he played some weird, he still came off the bench in a preseason game. Just for everybody's edification, I don't know when this is going up, but we're recording on Thursday, October 6th. I think it's probably going to go up early next week. So we'll have another preseason game under our belts to have overreacted to. The things he does in offense is just like, okay, this guy is a very skilled basketball player, but the defensive stuff, even Tim Cato reported this morning in The Athletic that the Mavericks coaching staff is not enthused with his defensive effort. Which it's just like, at what point does Rock meeting hard place like connect? Because the Mavericks need Christian Wood. Like this isn't with Brunson being gone, if we're getting to shortly, with Brunson being gone, they need him to score. They need him on the floor. They need him, frankly, to soak up big man minutes because Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell just cannot play the minutes they played.
I think it'll be interesting. So not to go into like the plus minus, you can contextualize all sorts of ways.
Sure.
Right? But for me, I was talking about this the other day on Twitter. At its very core, you can argue with all you want. Plus minus is literally, did you win or lose your minutes on the floor? That's it. That's all it is. Is like, did you? Now it doesn't mean that you're the reason why. It just, this is what happened. This is a event occurred. You were on the court. Team was outscored by X or outscored opponent by Y.
Right.
I'm going to be very curious if it turns out that basically he looks like garbage. He doesn't give good effort. He's not where he needs to be. The coaches and teammates are frustrated. They were still a +7 and all other bigs are like a +4.
Yeah.
Like this is, I'm watching this in Denver with MPJ, where MPJ in the first preseason game got lost on 4 different possessions. Had no idea where he was supposed to be. Was not at all where he was supposed to be on the floor. Caught it and drained a contested jumper. Just didn't matter because he's a 6'10", 50, 40, 90 shooter. It doesn't matter. So with Christian Wood, it's like, okay, if the defensive rating jumps to 111 and you're like last year, you're like trying to get in the 108 range. You're 3 points worse with him on the floor. And like with JaVale, you're at like a 105. And so it's really excellent. But offensively, you're like a 115. Do you care?
The offense in Dallas didn't really find itself until after Porzingis got traded because
Yes.
they were running two different offenses: the make Porzingis happy offense and the Luka plays Luka ball offense, paired with also Luka getting into shape. You just make a blanket assumption that they're going to continue to play offense the way they played last year, which wasn't super efficient, but was still pretty friggin' good. And it's
Well,
I've
after
heard.
All-Star break, like there's still room for improvement there. It's one of the reasons why, again, I'm high on the win totals. I'm just like, I think this team underperformed last year.
Yeah. I mean, they underperformed for the first half of the year, and then they overperformed the second half of the year.
I don't even know if that's true, Kirk.
Dude, they went 35-12 after January 1.
But there's a big difference between like here's the question, right? Is it important how you played, or is it important what you won?
It's winning. Yeah.
And here's what's interesting is like, so our good friend Seth Partnow would tell you that how you played and what those numbers say is more important than the win-loss record. Here's what's fascinating when we talk about the betting space, right? When we talk about the win total.
Okay.
The research I've done shows that the bookmakers think exactly the way Seth does. So they set these lines based off of what the numbers say that they should have been, not what they actually won, which means that there's often actually an overcorrection in that direction. And the teams that overperformed and won more games than they were supposed to go over the next year. And the teams that underperformed, that everybody's like, they should have won way more games, I'm hitting the over, those teams go under. So it's like, if the Mavericks, who are basically, by the way, according to these metrics, were basically in line with where they should have been last year. If the Mavericks last year, if we think like, well, honestly, they underperformed late in the year, you're right that the win-loss record actually matters more, because the win-loss record oftentimes is more indicative of actually how the next year will result relative to the market than what the numbers suggest.
Interesting. Crazy, because I have a hard time with this, and we're going to circle into why shortly, because I think some of it is Brunson related, at least for as far as the betting markets are concerned. I can see I've heard just kind of through just through the grapevine that kid is just, he's not much of an analytics guy. It's not that he has disdain for them or anything. It's just he very much prefers what his eyes are telling him.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that rubber meets the road in relation to what you're talking about, because it like Christian Wood's like body language is like you Luka Doncic can get away with shitty body language because he's an MVP candidate. Like Christian Wood cannot. So it's one of those things where I'm wondering how these two things reconcile themselves as the year goes on.
So that's the question, right? Like, okay, the Christian Wood pairing is excellent, but they're losing games. Then is Jason Kidd going to blame JaVale McGee, or is he going to blame Christian Wood? He's going to blame Christian Wood, because he's going to be like, my eyes tell me that you're not trying hard enough and you're the problem, right? But if the numbers match the win performance, and if I'm right, and like they are like a +6 with Christian Wood, and they're like a +4 or +3 with JaVale and the other bigs, then and Wood gets more minutes, then Kidd will keep playing him. Now, the opposite is true too, right? With him coming off the bench. If it's like, well, look, we're winning with JaVale playing 30 minutes a night, Christian playing 15, and the bigs filling in the rest, like that's working. Coaches will always stick with whatever is getting them wins. Like, there just aren't coaches that will look at, I have not met one that will actually look at this and go, look, we're winning games, but we're actually losing significant, like we are playing so poorly in these minutes, I have to change something.
Well, that's what happened to Dallas at the start of the year. Like, they were winning games, but their win expectation was they should have been like under 500 for the first 20 games.
Yeah. So maybe that's a credit to Kidd, right? That despite it netting him good win-loss results, he went away from, hey, everybody gets the egalitarian Mavericks, as I was calling them at the time.
Yeah. Well, okay, that then goes to what led me to bother you today specifically in relation to Jalen Brunson. Could you sort of explain your position on what Jalen Brunson's departure has resulted in with these win totals and bets?
All right, so the win total last year was 47.5 for the Mavericks, 48.5 in some spots. That was the closing line on Dallas's win total. And this year it's 48.5. And you go like, okay, so by Vegas' standards, they should be exactly the same. That doesn't reflect a loss. But if you look at what Dallas did win-loss record-wise, right? Like Dallas goes over. And so if you calculate based off of that, you would think like, wait, so they don't get any credit whatsoever for what they did last year, essentially. Like they're just the exact same team with this factored in as Brunson leaving in the market. And so they're right back to where they started. Like they made all these strides last year. They won 52 games. Their Pythagorean expectation was 50 and a half. 2 wins higher, and yet they're still below 50. We see all these teams with these 50-win markers, like the Denver Nuggets, who didn't make the Western Conference Finals, are at 50 and a half to 51 and a half. There's actually 52 and a half in the market because it's getting bet so much. And I think Denver will be better this year. All these teams are in that high marker versus the Mavericks, who are beneath the Memphis Grizzlies and in the same tier as like the Timberwolves, right? Who people think are going to be really good, but like not like one of the top tier teams. That to me, there was a lot of conversation in like the betting markets and all these type of things about the idea that basically, well, you got to downgrade them because they lost Brunson. And for me, when I looked at the entire kind of tableau of the roster, I came out with there should literally be 0 loss here for Brunson's loss.
That's really something.
Because here's the thing. Again, a lot of this is just predicated on, I just think Luka's usage rate is going to be disgusting. Like, I think it's going to be throw up in your mouth. Oh my God. About like, he just has the ball all the freaking time. Look at these numbers. Like, I really think that that's kind of going to be the plan, and that's how it's going to execute. And if I'm wrong, I can see them going under. If they try egalitarian stuff, like, don't get me wrong, I saw the same quotes you did and all Mavericks fans did when they were like, yeah, no, I think we need to really push Frank Ntilikina and Josh Green to handle the ball more. And I'm like, nope. Like, literally, you should just play Luka 40 minutes and have him handle the ball all the time. That's your best shot here, guys.
Which is just crazy because it goes to show, and I just got off a different podcast talking about this, and this is not specifically what we're talking about, but the Mavericks have just really, really, really made so many catastrophic mistakes in team building with this guy, and it hasn't mattered.
Nope. And like, look, I think a lot of this is predicated on the key question. If you're betting the Mavericks, and especially on the win totals basis or on the division, which I think there's some value on, I bet it earlier in the summer when the odds were longer. A lot of this is predicated on an assumption that they can repeat the defensive performance of last year, which I thought it was just me in our group, right? That we were all like, I don't understand how this team is good defensively. So like I asked around, I asked NBA analytics people, and they were like, no idea. Doesn't make any sense. They were just good. I asked like scouts, like pro scouts, and they were just like, well, they put a lot of pressure on the edge and they have lots of length and good perimeter defense, but I don't know how they went from where they were to where they were last year. Sometimes that just happens. Like, it literally was just kind of who knows? But what was also interesting is I asked all those same people, okay, so if you can't explain it, do you expect a regression? And to a man, they were all like, not really. Like, there wasn't a lot of indicators either from the statistical community or from the scouting community that I talked to of huge outlier defensive year, immediate regression back to form. It was kind of like, no, like they've set a new marker. And so if they regress, it's going to be regressed to somewhere like in the middle. They fall from a top 10 defense to a top 15 defense. And if they're a top 15 defense with how good the offense is going to be with what should be, again, I think the most valuable player this year with one of the best players in the NBA, unquestionably, he has to be in the top 5 conversation. If he's that good, and their weapons can hit open shots, which I know has frustrated you in the past, then they're going to cook so much that defense can just be like, that's pretty good. And they'll still rack up 50 wins.
It's really interesting. Because I think I just think Kidd is such a defensively minded guy that he's going to put the emphasis on the defense working out at the expense of the offense because it worked for him last year.
Right. I mean, I think that's going to be, I always kind of think that coaches will eventually revert back to like, I don't think Kidd and Malone are all that different as coaches. Very heavy emphasis as coaches. They're very different as people, in my experience. But like Malone knew he had an offensive roster. He still couldn't help himself by trying to play defensive players. Like he's trotting out there Torrey Craig 3 years ago, being like, I need a stopper. Like he can't help himself. He can't just like stop caring about defense. Most coaches can't. And they understand how important it is. And honestly, in the NBA, I will say this. I have the stats somewhere. If you're a top 10 defense, you hit your over on your win total. You win more games. You just do. Like that's way more sustainable than offense. You can have a great offense and still be a middling team. If you have a great defense, the Cavs are a good example of this. You play defense, it's going to travel. You're going to win a lot of games. You're probably going to be way better than people thought you were going to be if your defense is just better. So I don't blame him for that. The defensive effort thing is interesting, right? Just in terms of how much emphasis do you put on it? How does that impact your pace? Like, do you let your guys run? Like, do you let your guys, can you play a style that is more analogous, not necessarily to the Warriors in terms of sharing the ball, but in terms of like that 2015 team in particular played hellacious. This team this year played hellacious defense and then got out with a lot of shooters and good ball handlers and good passers and were able to create things. The 2018 Rockets, Harden had an extremely high usage rate still. They had good defenders. They got out and they found shooters and they shot a ton of threes. And that 3-point stuff can also make up a lot of the differential here, right? Like their offense cannot look very good and still be very efficient and put up big numbers because of the personnel that they have.
Man, yeah. I'm just still very, and I'm so deep in it. Sometimes I have a hard time seeing the bigger picture. It's reconciling the fact that I think that there's so many teams better than them in the West, and yet Luka Doncic just exists. And it's very similar to like Dirk, 2005 to 2008 Dirk teams, where it's just like they just kept being really good because Dirk existed. And the West was also just such a murderer's row. And I don't know. So there's something going on right now, like as we've been talking, and it's worth bringing up in relation to, win totals and what you think this might do out West. So Victor Wembanyama is playing on ESPN2, and he looks like I don't know how to people. You can just separate who's seen Victor Wembanyama play basketball versus who hasn't by the reactions, because if you watch him play basketball, the doubt goes away, despite him being 7'5" and whatnot. We're right now sort of seeing like talk about this being, probably the greatest tanking race since Tim Duncan. Do you think like that? How does that play into your thinking ahead about like win totals and that sort of element of the betting market?
It's funny because everybody wants to talk about this instead of how to bet the number one pick, and that's like what I want to talk about.
So let's talk about that too. I don't care. We're more than halfway through.
I will give you the very, very quick digest version. The books I talked to a bookmaker and he said they're not going to offer it until they get to June. But he said if we had to open a market right now, I put Victor Wembanyama at minus 10,000, 100 to 1 to go number one. There's not like an equilateral value here where it's like, it's not like Victor's not going to be minus 10,000. And so Scoot Henderson would be plus 10,000. Scoot's going to be like plus 350, plus 450, plus 800, maybe if they really got extreme. When the market opened in February last year, Jabari Smith opened at 10 to 1. And I was talking to scouts who were all like, yeah, Jabari Smith's the guy. So I bet heavy on Jabari Smith then. And so when June came around and Paolo Banchero was 12 to 1 and we started hearing that he might go number one, I bet even bigger on that. And that two-way hedge position was basically like, as long as Chet didn't go, I was good. I will tell you the same thing. When the market's open for this, you're going to get Scoot Henderson at a big number that will, like, you will get closing line value. Scoot Henderson will be at longer odds when the market opens than he will be that last week in June when he's going to be like plus 200, plus 3. People will force the conversation of maybe this team's going to draft Scoot. Maybe Scoot's better. What about Victor's medical history? All these types of things. So, like, as soon as you can, I would advise betting Scoot Henderson and then being able to play back on Wembanyama once people start to freak out that last week before the draft, when everybody's like, maybe it's not him. And then it winds up being Wembanyama anyway. As far as the tanking stuff goes, here's the thing. There's a couple things you have to kind of like keep in mind. One, the odds are flattened, so it reduces a little bit of your value. What's going to be interesting is who sets the bar. And what I mean by that is there a team that legitimately is like, we're going to win less than 20 games? Like, that's honestly hard to do in the NBA. It's hard to win less than 20 because so many players do not care on a night-to-night basis. You can just
Right, you
catch
can
them.
sneak past somebody, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the so-and-so, they just beat the Lakers, and then they had 2 nights off, and they stayed an extra night in LA, and then they flew in yesterday, and now they have an early tip versus an East Coast team. That's weird. They look a little sluggish. Like, these spots just kind of happen. So what's gonna be interesting is like if there's a team that just paces itself and is like, no, we're out tanking all of you, whether it's San Antonio, OKC, Indiana, whoever, Utah, I still think is gonna have to make more trades. Their roster's too good. But if they set a bar like that, how hard does a team chase?
Yeah.
Like, are they really going to be like, yeah, we're actually going to, and they have to be careful because there's so much conversation about it. The league is going to send a memo and basically be like, no. We are going into the new media deal. You cannot be doing we cannot have 3 teams trying to win less than 20 games. Right. And so it's like with the flattened lottery odds, are you okay at 23? Are you okay at 24 wins? Like, there's teams, the Rockets can win 24 games, get a top 4 pick in a very deep draft that our friend Brad Schroeder keeps telling us, and be totally fine with good odds to get 1 or 2 and still go over their win total. So I've actually looked historically, these numbers that are like, whenever it's like, these are supposed to be the worst teams in the league, there's actually a little value on the over. And the numbers that are like below 25, if their win total is 25 or less, there's no trend. Those teams don't tend to go under their win total because it's all priced into the market.
So I just sent you something that I don't know if you've seen, and I want to watch your face as you see this clip. It's a clip of Victor Wembanyama, and this is just great podcasting.
Sure, that's the thing.
What I just got a live reaction to was Victor Wembanyama's fading, trailing right corner 3 that he hits on the move, looking like frickin' Tracy McGrady. I have never seen a big guy do anything like this. Anyways,
he just like trots to the corner, fades.
Sorry. Again, Mavericks podcast, guys, but I needed to talk to Matt about this a little bit because I want to. And here, let me link it back into the Mavericks. Imagine this sum of all fears scenario that our guy Ian Cobb at Mavs Moneyball talked about. The Spurs and the Rockets have the potential to be so bad that both Victor and Scoot Henderson could end up in the Southwest Division to go along with Luka Doncic, Zion Williamson, Ja Morant. Ja Morant would be the worst basketball player out of the 3 of those in terms of talent, which is preposterous. I hate this. I hate this. They have to flatten the odds at some point because the East is simply never going to get better. It's been 20 years of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say this. I honestly, I'm not saying I believe that the league affixes the lottery. I am not. I want this on record that Matt Moore does not believe the league affixes the lottery. I will say that certain results, like the Cleveland Cavaliers getting LeBron James, the New Orleans Pelicans, after playing nice in a deal to send Anthony Davis to the Lakers, get Zion Williamson. That's before we get into Ewing and all these other types of things.
Sure.
Like, sometimes these things just kind of seem ordained. And so it would not shock me that in this year, with so much high-end, super mega star talent, that a team surprisingly jumps up. Like, to me, like, one of the most likely scenarios that I would literally bet right now, Scoot Henderson already has representation.
Mm-hmm.
It would not shock, by the way, his representation has a variety of connections to Houston, by the way. But it would not surprise me to see the draft comes, Scoot switches representation to CAA. What do you know? The next guy, the number 1 pick. That's weird. What a coinkydink. These kind of things just don't surprise me. And so in general, I don't, is it possible that the Spurs wind up with Victor Wembanyama and the Rockets wind up with Scoot. I think it's entirely on the board. I will just say from how the league has historically gone,
Yeah.
I don't think that the league is rushing to set San Antonio back up, given how their ratings went when they were literally the best franchise over the first 15 years of the decade.
That's true. No, that's very true. Well, there's more Mavs stuff I want to pick your brain on, but I think we need to get some actual basketball under our belts. And then we'll maybe circle back with you 20 or so games in the season. Thank you for taking part of your Thursday afternoon to talk with me. I appreciate it.
Anytime for you, man.
All right. You got anything you want to plug on the way out? Because you run a daily betting podcast, which is outstanding. But I can't remember the name of it. That's how good of a
Yeah, you can check out Buckets. We do Buckets, and we should by early season, we should be back up to 5 a week. We'll have episodes on futures every single week, breakdowns of all that kind of stuff. Best way to see all of it, though, our app is amazing. It's the best way for you to track scores. You get, even if you're not a bettor, right? Because folks in Texas can't bet yet. But the cool thing about it, it's got like a halftime clock. So if you're like, oh, how much time do I have before I need to be back for the second half? We literally have a clock in there. Fast as API. It's going to keep you updated. Lots of great content in there. Check it out. The Action Network app.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. We'll talk soon. Everybody go seek out Matt Moore's work on the Action Network. It is a really cool app. Do not follow him on Twitter if that's in order. Everyone have a good week. Don't know when this is going up, but there'll be plenty of Mavs content coming. So check out Mavs Moneyball, and I will talk with you all soon.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.